Welcome to the CMO Spotlight, and I'm delighted today to have a conversation with Navin Sharma, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Church's Chicken. Welcome, Navin.
Thanks, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
So excited to have you here. So I wondered if we could just begin the conversation by you telling us a little bit about the company, what your role is there at the company, and then we'll jump into career path after that. But I'm just curious, just tell us a little bit about the size and scale and what Church's Chicken does, and then your role there.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for asking. So we run and franchise restaurants, and we sell, like our name, we sell chicken, mainly like fried chicken, both bone-in, like chicken, like legs and thighs, but also tenders, and we've also done like boneless wings and bone-in wings in the past, and those will actually be coming. We operate in the US and actually internationally as well, like half in the US, half internationally, about 1.5 billion across the whole system. We have over 100 restaurants in Puerto Rico, so we're pretty big there, and we're pretty big internationally as well in like the Middle East and Asia, and just opening in Europe as well.
Wow. And so talk a little bit about your role as CMO, and does that include international work? Is that just in the United States? What is, and I'm also curious just a little bit about your team, kind of what disciplines your team is focused on.
Yeah, great questions. So I am the global CMO. We do focus more in the US. We have an international marketing group that covers that out, and a lot of the international franchisees do that type of work to regionalize. As CMO, it's overall the traditional marketing disciplines like creative, media. We have a culinary generally in restaurants as well. So like the product kitchen and coming up with limited time offers, but also our core chicken products. Analytics is in there as well, our field marketing group, PR. And then I also run our digital and loyalty group. So that's on our app and website. You can order online and have it delivered. And then also we have a loyalty program, Real Rewards, that launched last year and is growing really quickly. And I have a team that does that.
Wow. So chicken delivery is an interesting concept because I know some people think, fried food doesn't maybe keep as well as other types of food, but it sounds like, you've figured out a way to make it work.
Yeah, it does keep, and a lot of people will buy, like, you can get a lot of fried chicken. You can get like 16 pieces, and people will put it in the fridge and save some of it and then reheat it like later. You might do it too, from some people do it from grocery store, people do it
Hmm.
from
Yeah, yeah.
our restaurants as well.
Cool. Very cool. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about your career journey. I know you got your undergraduate from Duke University, and then you got your MBA from Duke, and then I think you began your career as a consultant. I think I saw IBM and then
Yeah.
Boston Consulting Group. But then
Mhm.
you jumped into restaurant pretty quickly after that. So I
Mhm.
wonder if you could just give us a quick kind of snapshot of your career path that led to this.
Yeah, I like you said, I went to Duke. I did engineering there. I worked for IBM. That's actually how I got into marketing, funny enough, in engineering. I loved engineering and like problem solving and building stuff. And at one point, it like one of our projects actually didn't have a market, and it got canceled. And I thought to myself, man, if the marketing group is gonna drive our success, maybe I should be over there. And that led me to go back to school and get into marketing. And I was really interested in it. I ended up in consulting, like you said. A lot of focus was on like consumer companies and go to market, like promotional types of work and pricing and go to market in those areas. And then you're right, I left and I joined Arby's restaurant group and got back into the marketing team under the CMO when I left, because I always wanted to get back to marketing, and that was exciting to do. So I covered like geez, I must have covered like 15 plus years there really quickly.
Well, 15 years is a long, long time. And so you probably held a lot of different roles within, I think, Arby's and then Inspire, obviously, as it
Right.
became. But it all was in the marketing realm and just
It was. it was like marketing and digital. And so when I got to Arby's, I did our insights and analytics and digital. It was a good place for a ex-consultant to land. And that was in the marketing group. So I got to dive deeper into media. We had, when I came on board, I can talk about this later. We were launching the We Have the Meats campaign. It was a pretty phenomenal campaign that the brand did. That my boss, the CMO, he led that, where I learned a lot from him doing that. And so I got to learn about creative there. I got to learn about how to run like a marketing calendar, and promotions, and just a wide range of things. And then we didn't have digital or loyalty, so I got to help build that out. And then with Inspire Brands, a lot of people might not know what Inspire Brands is. It was a restaurant portfolio company we built out over a few years, and it was Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Sonic Drive-In, Jimmy John's, Dunkin', and Baskin Robbins. So four M&As, and then we brought those companies together into a large restaurant company, and that was really cool to see how all those different brands operate and how consumers are different as well. Learn about the consumer, and then I got to do marketing across all six brands, which was awesome, and digital.
Well, and obviously each, to your point, each of those brands has a completely different customer base in some cases. Maybe there's some overlap here and there, but some are more like dine in, some are more drive through or to go and that kind of thing. So you probably got all facets of kind of the
Yeah,
dining experience through that. And so what then prompted I think you've been at churches for about a year and 4 months at the time of filming this. So
mhm.
what prompted you to go, okay, I'm time for a new challenge and move over to churches?
Yeah. It's about half a year that I've been here,
Oh,
and
oh, okay.
yeah, and it was that I would say I wanted to get like the broadest experience in marketing possible. My role at Inspire was very deep in a few areas across many brands, and I didn't have like the singular view of one brand.
Hmm.
And that's what I get here. And I love the team here too. Like the CEO and the CFO, I had met before, and our head of international I knew from before. And when I met the team in the process, it was they loved all of them and loved the opportunity. So what the opportunity to run creative and the calendar and our culinary research and development, in addition to like media and digital and loyalty and some of like the connections type of work and analytics and insights that I had done before, was a really great opportunity for me. So that drove me coming to this role.
Awesome. So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you either wish that you'd gotten early in your career, or maybe advice you would dispense to a young person who's just beginning their marketing career. I mean, maybe not starting as an engineer and then, or maybe that is the advice, to start as an engineer and then make the switch.
It could be depending on what like you need to pick up. I think like one of the best marketers I worked with was actually a finance major in college, which is very helpful to be able to work with the CFO, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
it was very helpful for him. He was like very creative as well. For me, I probably have two pieces of advice, and like one of them is try to get as diverse an experience as you can,
Mhm.
and that experience and learning across all of marketing, I believe would be like more helpful to your growth than just like getting the titles right
Yeah,
away. Because when you get to a chief marketing officer level, you need to have experience across all of them. And you won't be an expert in all areas, right? So
right, 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 right.
you need to understand how to manage all of those areas, because you'll be responsible for everything. And in this day and age, like like a lot of companies and recruiters are looking for people who are digitally native, but also have come understand like the creative and storytelling part of marketing as well.
Mhm.
And to find someone who can do both is very powerful. And then the second one is I would say foster as many connections as possible. And the reason for that is your network can help you a lot, both when you're looking for a role, but also when you're in a role and you've come across a problem you don't know how to solve. You might know someone or have talked to someone who's done that, and they can help you out along the way. So I found both of those really helpful in my journey.
I love that. Well, often taught or told students that like you're collecting relationships that you nurture over time, and you're collecting skills, and
Yeah,
it's like, but I like that perspective of you want a really diverse skill set, because I think some young people focus really on becoming an expert in one thing. And while that can be useful as a way to begin your journey, you got to diversify so that you have a broad enough skill set as you move up the food chain of a marketing organization, to be able to
yeah, for
understand the
sure.
different areas.
For sure. I like how you said that. Uh, I know collecting skill sets, and then you said
Relationships. I mean,
nurturing relationships.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love it. Okay, so I believe that everybody has a superpower. So I'm curious what you think your superpower could be.
It's probably like where I started out just because I got trained in it. It's problem solving and knowing how to build something. And and a lot of times if when you're in a role like a chief marketing officer, if you know you're not just going to go out and market, right? You're not just going to go out and make ads or or just start putting products out there. You need to understand the consumer and like what problem you're trying to solve, right? And then how are you like what are the steps you're going to take to go solve it for them and tell them the story that you have something they want, right?
Mhm.
So that problem solving and insight generation has served me well because I can it helps you down the road that you're going down. You make sure you're going down the right path.
Yeah. Well, I was a politics and speech communications double major in college. But I often say, really, at a liberal arts school, particularly, your major is critical thinking. You learn how
Thinking,
to do
yes.
critical thinking, right? Like, I could have majored in biology, I could have majored in math, I could have majored in anything, but really, it was about learning how to be a good
Mhm.
critical thinker, and that's more powerful to me than whatever your focus was on your major.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So I'm curious if there are specific values that you want to demonstrate as a leader, or maybe even values that you would demand from people on your team to be a part of your team.
That's very important when you're running a team. And I would think of it in a couple of ways. So I I like to give the people working to me, and I actually like to receive this as well. Like, what's the goal or what's the vision that their group or their role is trying to achieve? And then let those teams achieve it, right? At that point, though, you need to make sure they have a couple things. So, one, you need to make sure they have the resources, you need to make sure they have the right skills, and then you need to make sure they have the right plan to
Mhm.
go do it. And if they have all of that, like if that's the recipe, then they can achieve great things. And that's generally my philosophy on managing team, making sure the people have like the right vision and they can build that plan and go achieve it.
And then in terms of values, are there some specific values though that they have to
Uh,
have as well?
yeah, I think generally you need to be hardworking for sure. There's you need to be a team player as well, I would say. And you mentioned critical thinking. I've called it many different things since we said it
Mhm.
that way. Let's go with that one. And I would say those things together are very important. Now, like the knowledge or like the skill set in what they're working for is pretty important too.
Mhm.
Now, that's not necessarily a value as much. I would say like more like working hard and working within a team are
Yeah.
very
Hey,
important.
yeah, teamwork is huge for sure, especially in marketing, where we have to often rely on dependencies from not just the rest of the marketing organization, but even external partners quite a bit too. I mean, you mentioned partnering with finance and understanding
Yes.
how to speak the right language, the same language as finance can be super useful as a marketer, right?
It is, and I'm lucky that I know our CFO, and he's great. He believes in the power of marketing.
Hmm.
And so he understands marketing, and I feel like I have a little bit of understanding of finance. So that relationship is really powerful when you
Yeah.
can get both of those roles on the same page, because you can make magic together.
Oh
Another
yeah.
one that's important these days is the CMO and the CIO relationship as
Yeah.
well. If you get that one right too, with the way the world's going, you can do some awesome things
Well,
together.
well, there was even a point, I think, a tipping point where the CMO actually spends more on technology than other
Yeah,
parts of the organizations. And
yeah,
you think about marketing technology, technology is such a huge part of marketing and important to the
mhm.
not just the like the mechanism of marketing, right? So that's a great, those are some great partnerships to have within the organization.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point you said about the CMO owning a pretty large technology budget. Like we want it to market better, but we don't want to be building those types of things, right? And maintaining it and understanding how to scale it. And a CIO is really good at those things. They're really good at like what's out there, like what new technologies are coming out there, and if you can work with one who understands that and can bring like that to the marketing team, and as a marketer, you can clearly communicate like we want a better understanding of our customer, and we want to talk to them where they are, right? And we want to personalize to them. If you can have that dialogue back and forth and work together, you can build some awesome capabilities.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little because here at Setup, we're marketing matchmakers and we connect
Mhm.
brands and agencies together. And so we don't live on the client side. We aren't, actual marketers other than just marketing for our own organization. And we're not on the agency side. We live in that space between, which I think gives us a little bit of a unique perspective to understand both from a dispassionate third party kind of perspective. And so I'm just curious generally how you like to work with marketing agencies, either at churches or even in your previous roles. How do you work with agencies?
Yeah, let me talk about like the types of agencies we work with and how we work with them. So
Okay.
they're definitely valued partners, and we work with them for creative, our social, our media, public relations, like our merchandising in our restaurant, we call it POP.
Hmm.
You definitely want the food to look great in those shots. We think
Right.
we've got some beautiful products, and we want that to come across as well. And then there's some other functions as well. So I mentioned they were like they're valued
Yeah.
partners. Oftentimes they can like I feel they can bring like a skill set and a point of view we don't have. Um, so I said media. So think about like programmatic buying has gotten really important. And a brand our size, like we don't necessarily have access to someone who knows how to do that. Whereas the agency can have that in place, and they also know where the market's going, right? And they'll know like what types of roles are going to be important in the future, and like help us get access to that. Even with like influencers today, helping connect us with that. So what I'm hinting at there is a lot of thought leadership, and they
Yeah.
can they can see what we can't see because they're across a lot of industries, a lot of
Right.
companies, and if a good agency will anticipate like what we need and in a collaborative way help us with that, give us that insight. So that's when the agency and the company relationship works at its best, when it's very symbiotic and we're helping each other out and we're bringing to each other something that the other doesn't have. Like
Yeah.
on the flip side, like there's some things that happen every day that are probably lower ad for an agency. Like I believe that like our social group, hands-on keyboard interacting with our guests is best done internally, because we know our guests really well, and we can almost put in like 24/7 communications with them. And that's like a counterexample where it makes a lot of sense for us to have that on our team. So when we align on that and have everyone doing what they're best at, it's magic.
Yeah. Well, I like your point of view of number one, your agencies can bring you perspectives and best practices, for example, from other industries, because,
Mhm.
I mean, you think about it like on the agency side, they might work on, restaurant today, but they might be working on automotive or CPG or travel and
Mhm.
hospitality on another day. And maybe there's something interesting happening in one of those industries that would be relevant for your business and something you could try or something that you're missing that you should be doing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like loyalty started very early in airlines and
Right.
hospitality, right? And there are loyalty agencies who've done that work with them, right? And there have been some of them been part of the big holding companies, but there's some independent agencies out there. So they've kind of seen what what great looks like there. Now it's different in every industry, and like a really good agency will understand that, and like they'll understand, like in this example, they'll understand loyalty, and then they'll understand restaurants, and they can help you figure out like how best to structure it in your industry.
And you mentioned, for example, wanting to have social, at least like the community management aspect and responsiveness in-house. Are there certain just general disciplines of marketing that you feel we really need that outside perspective that an agency would bring? Are there certain disciplines you say we got to own it in-house beyond the social that you already mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mix on all of those, and there's some roles like we can talk about creative, right? I think like someone who films and someone who makes like who ideates on like how to tell like a story or an insight is like a skill set we love to get access to through our agency partners. They bring that to us. But like the core understanding of the guest and what they're looking for in their life and
Hmm.
how we fit into that and how what we're looking to do fits into that is something like we believe our like an internal creative person or a content person should understand. And then when you mesh those two together is when the great work happens. And so it's not necessarily, I don't think about it like a function is either all internal or all
Yeah,
external.
yeah.
It's like what part makes sense for us to have internal and what part do we partner with the agency to help us with. So that's generally, and I think at first sometimes people get a little bit worried that, hey, this company's trying to insource from an agency. It's actually no. I want to bring what I think we're best at in our company, and I want you to spend. You can spend even more time on what you're best at, so that you do even better work for us.
Yeah, well, I think when you do that, you're beginning the conversation in mid-conversation versus starting the conversation at the very beginning, which is useful in terms of, because you're leveraging both sides of the coin to their highest value for the
Mhm.
organization, which is great. So I'm curious, how do you demonstrate the value of marketing? You mentioned having a great relationship with your CFO, for example. How do you demonstrate the value of marketing to the non-marketing functions within the organization, especially when I think a lot of non-marketers fancy themselves, amateur marketers sometimes?
Yeah, you definitely see that, and there's a few ways to do it. There's just that pure financial aspect of it. If you can translate what marketing is doing into like incremental value of the business, like dollars delivered or how many people visit our restaurants, like what do they buy, and how like the work you're doing translates to that. That's a very easy way to get at like the value of it.
Hmm.
Now, you brought up another point as well, like the ideas can come from anywhere, and I actually think a good idea can come from wherever, right? Just
Yeah.
because someone's not like a marketer doesn't mean they won't have a great idea, and it's cool when they give us one because I'm happy to source from wherever to have the best marketing possible. I'd say there, if you can, we've taken a whole company through like a consumer definition and a brand building process. And that's been very powerful, and building an integrated marketing plan from beginning to end. So we've taken like finance people through that and operators through that, and they start to see, oh, you guys aren't just like throwing ideas against the wall and like going with whatever sounds good,
Right, right, right.
right? So we'll start with what is the insight that
Hmm.
exists in the consumer's mind, and then how is your brand positioned to deliver that? And then like the consumer sizing, are there actually enough of those people out there to build a business? And then based on that, like what do they think about you in their mind, and where do you want them to think about? So there's a from to on that, and then you build an action plan around it. Okay, I need to communicate this to get person A who thinks X about me to actually think Y, and that's why they go to my competitor. And we did like in my former role, we actually trained this brand building process to a lot of marketers, but we brought in finance and
Oh,
operations, real estate people as well, and some
huh.
others. And like one of the most excited participants was an operator, and we did it on like some well-known companies out there, like build a marketing plan for them. And he just loved it. He was like the team leader, and
Hmm.
it was a CPG product. He was like talking about how do we sell more like chips in the restaurant, and
Right, right.
like, getting into it. But he came out of it. He's like, man, this really helped me do my job because it understands you. It made me understand why you're asking some of the questions you do, and
Yeah.
how to bring you a good idea, right?
That is a fantastic idea to, by letting them behind the curtain and seeing how
Mhm.
you become a marketer gives them an appreciation for how difficult it can be and how consumer focused you are. And that,
Yeah,
like, a wise marketer once said, you're never wrong if you focus on the consumer and you think
yeah.
about the consumer first, right? Like, you're not wrong. It doesn't matter what campaign, what idea, what creative, but if you're thinking about the consumer and what's best for the consumer, then you're doing it right.
And we're gonna do that here in a couple of months. So we're in like next month, the next month or so. Well, we're taking everyone through our consumer and what our brand purpose and brand promise and
Mm.
brand DNA are, and as a result, like why are we doing that? But we're gonna refine it, and we're gonna have it. Some people might be scared about this, but I'm
Mhm.
not. I love having the operators in, and our finance leads in, and other key leaders in our company, because they'll get closer to our guests as
Yeah.
well, and they'll see things in their world. So I'm excited. I'm really jazzed up to do this here.
Yeah. Well, the guest is the tiebreaker, right? Like if they have
Mhm.
an idea of something and you have the idea of something, yeah, let's just ask the guest what they think because
Yeah,
they're right. Yeah.
exactly. And it'll if we disagree on something like you said, at least they've been trained in that framework.
Yeah.
And they'll understand like why, or they might use it against me in a positive way and maybe even convince me.
Yeah, change your mind about something. So I'm curious if there's a program or a campaign or something, either at churches or in your previous life at Inspire, or even before that, if you want, that was really important for you because it taught you a valuable lesson, either because it was a flop and you needed to learn that lesson because of something that didn't go the way you'd hoped, or maybe it was a huge success that you'd like to emulate again in the future.
Yeah, I alluded to it. We have the meats at
Mhm.
Arby's, and I worked for the CMO who repositioned that. So I got to be a part of the team that developed and rolled it out and then ran it for a while. And it's
Yeah.
still on air now, uh 11 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's had a powerful presence in the marketplace, and it was like the format was simple, but it was breakthrough in the
Hmm.
day. And if you haven't seen it, it's like the food against the white background, showcasing like what the brand has. And the
Yeah.
reason it worked is it actually challenged, in my opinion, it challenged what held Arby's back at the time. That it was just like this place for roast beef that you went once in a while.
Yeah.
When we went to Arby's, there was like 8 different types of protein there, and they were like prepped in the restaurant, and you had these fresh sandwiches and this like wide offering, and people didn't think about that. They just thought about this like really simple thing. So the power of the agency is like they worked with us and took this insight and came out with we have the meats, and it just broke through and changed that brand's trajectory. And I'm very fortunate to work for Rob, who's the CMO, who he had me on his team, and I learned a ton, and I keep applying that since then.
Yeah. He ended up going on to Papa John's as
Mhm.
CEO, and then he ended up at Shake Shack, I think, as
Right.
CEO now, right? Well, I remember meeting Rob when he was here in Atlanta at Arby's and that
Mhm.
role as CMO. But yeah, it's a very powerful and simple brand message. I mean, Arby's is not your place if you're vegetarian or vegan, like, but for everybody else that does eat meat, it's a good spot.
Yeah, and that's like really important in marketing. You can't be everything to everyone,
Right.
right? And people would ask us like, why don't you have vegetarian food? And we would double down on it. And like April Fools, we would say we were bringing like vegetarian, right? And people got angry at us. But
Right.
that's not who the brand is. The brand isn't like you, the brand's not about like being everything for everyone. It's
Right.
about know your guests, know what they're looking for, and deliver on that, and be a bit unapologetic about it.
Yeah, I love it.
Proud of it.
I'm going to shift gears. We'll have a couple of rapid fire things to wrap things up that aren't necessarily marketing specific questions. I'm curious if there's a book or a quote or a sports
Mhm.
team or a movie or a band that really inspires you. And what is it about that thing or entity that inspires you most?
I, I'd say a quote that
Okay.
I appreciate more and more these days is it's an old Eastern quote. I believe it's Confucius,
Hmm.
and it's the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones.
Hmm.
And I really like that one because it's about like you can make really big things happen if you can break it into small pieces and stay at it and be
Hmm.
diligent. You can make really big things happen. So oftentimes in life, you either get asked or you want to make a big change or drive a big change. And if you just think about, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? You might get overwhelmed. But if
Hmm.
you just start working, like build a plan, start working at it, you'll be amazed by what you can accomplish with
Yeah.
consistent effort.
Well, and I think the other piece to that that you basically alluded to is it takes the first step. Like you gotta
Yes,
just
get
start. Like
started.
sometimes you just gotta start. Like
Yeah.
grab the first stone and move the first stone. It doesn't mean you're gonna try. If you try to move the whole mountain, you never will. But if you move the first stone, at least you got started.
Yeah, that's another big one. Some people like just spend forever just thinking through like what have
Yeah.
I got to do and planning and planning. You should do planning, right? Because if you just start running, you might run in the wrong direction. But like figure out like where you need to get going. But the best way to learn or the best way to do something is start doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this one, outside of your family, which is an easy, obvious choice, I'm curious where you find joy outside of work. Do you have hobbies or what do you love to do outside of family?
Yeah, this is as I get older, I I found myself gravitating to the gym.
Hmm.
And it's actually it goes in with a quote I had earlier. And it's, hey, if you go in a few times a week and have goals in mind, you can really see progress towards that. So, and it helps me feel better. It helps me do my job better as well. So I found a bit of solace in going to the gym and setting goals around what I'm going to do there, and then working to achieve it.
Hmm. Well, that's a good hobby that will become a lifelong, like as you said, as we age, that we know more and more how physical and mental are tied together. And so that's a
Right,
great practice.
right. And I heard, I wish I had started young. And there's some quote like the best time to start like going to the gym is like 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
I had a conversation with an insurance person today because I needed to check on something with insurance, and he said, He said, can I get you some life insurance while you're this young? And I said, this is the youngest that we'll both ever be. And he
Yes,
said, yes, it is.
yeah, you're not getting younger.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Navin Sharma, Chief Marketing Officer at Church's Chicken, this has been such a delight. Thank you so much for the time together.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me on today.